A billionaire takes a beggar home, only to uncover a shocking truth: she's his long-lost mother. But why was she abandoned? And who's been hiding the truth all these years? Stay tuned for a story of betrayal, redemption, and an unexpected twist that will leave you speechless. The city lights shimmered like distant stars as Lawrence Davis stepped out of his sleek black limousine. The evening air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain, but inside his gated mansion, everything was warm, polished, and impeccably maintained, just like his life. He adjusted the cuff of his custom-tailored suit, a gesture he had perfected over years of boardroom battles and high-stakes negotiations. Power and control were all he had ever known. Yet, something felt off that night. As he approached the grand iron gates of his estate, his sharp gaze landed on a hunched figure sitting by the entrance. A woman. She was draped in tattered, mismatched clothing, her thin frame barely covered against the evening chill. Her face was shadowed beneath the tangled mess of graying hair, and her hands, frail, shaking, were clasped together as if she were praying. Lawrence had seen countless beggars before, but there was something about her that made him stop. Maybe it was the way she sat, quiet, still, as though she had been waiting. "Get her away from the gate," his head of security barked, stepping forward. Lawrence raised a hand. "Wait." The woman lifted her head at the sound of his voice. Her eyes, hollow yet strangely familiar, locked onto his. "I'm looking for someone," she murmured, her voice raspy with age and hardship. Lawrence frowned. "Who?" She swallowed hard before answering. "My son." His chest tightened for reasons he couldn't explain. He forced his voice to remain steady. "And who is your son?" Her lips trembled before she whispered a name that sent a cold shiver down his spine. "Lawrence." A strange weight settled over him, an impossible, suffocating realization. His name. She knew his name. Lawrence Davis stood frozen, the night air suddenly feeling much colder. His name. The beggar woman had spoken his name as if she knew him, as if she had always known him. His mind raced, trying to make sense of it. "That's impossible," he muttered, more to himself than to her. The woman, still sitting on the cold pavement by the gate, clasped her bony hands together. Her eyes, pale and sunken, yet eerily familiar, never left his face. There was something unsettling in them, something that made his stomach twist. "Sir, should we call the police?" one of the security guards asked, his voice breaking the silence. Lawrence hesitated. His instincts told him to walk away, to dismiss her as just another lost soul in the city. He had spent his life closing doors to the past, and this felt like one he had no desire to open. But something inside him wouldn't let him leave. "Who are you?" he finally asked, his voice lower, controlled. The woman exhaled shakily, as if she had been holding her breath. "My name is Gloria," she said. "And I've been looking for you for a long time." Lawrence clenched his jaw. There was no way this woman was telling the truth. His mother had died when he was a baby, at least, that's what he had been told. He had grown up in a foster home, shuffled between different families until he was old enough to stand on his own. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing," he said, his voice sharp, "but my mother is dead." Tears welled up in Gloria's eyes. "That's what they wanted you to believe." His patience wore thin. He had dealt with con artists before, people who thought they could manipulate him for money. This was no different. "You think you can just show up here, claim to be my mother, and expect me to believe it?" "I have nothing to gain by lying," she said softly. "No money, no home, no name worth anything to anyone. All I have is the truth." Lawrence stared at her, trying to find a crack in her words. But she didn't look like a liar, she looked like a woman who had suffered. Then she spoke again, and this time, her words hit him like a thunderclap. "You have a birthmark on your left shoulder," she whispered. "A crescent-shaped mark." His breath caught in his throat. It wasn't possible. He had never told anyone about that. No one had ever seen it, not since he was a child. His mind reeled. How could she know? Lawrence Davis stood in the grand foyer of his mansion, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. The woman, Gloria, sat quietly on the edge of a leather armchair, hands folded in her lap. She didn't seem fazed by the opulence around her, nor did she look particularly comfortable. It was as if she had been placed in a world that no longer belonged to her. The soft glow of the chandelier above cast long shadows on her face, highlighting the deep lines etched into her skin. She looked exhausted, worn down by years of hardship. And yet, there was something in her posture, an unshakable dignity, a quiet strength. Lawrence paced in front of her, his arms crossed tightly. He had let her in, against all logic, against every instinct that told him this was a mistake. But that one sentence, her knowing about his birthmark, had shattered his certainty. He turned sharply to face her. "Tell me the truth. Everything." Gloria exhaled, as if she had been waiting for this moment for years. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with a sorrow he couldn't yet understand. "I never abandoned you," she said softly. Lawrence clenched his jaw. "That's not what the records say. I was told my mother died when I was an infant. That's what they wanted you to believe." Her voice wavered, but she didn't look away. "I never gave you up. You were taken from me." His breath hitched. "Taken?" She nodded slowly. "When you were only a few months old, I was committed to a psychiatric hospital against my will. They told me I was unstable, unfit to raise you. But it was a lie. A carefully crafted lie to separate us." Lawrence scoffed. "That sounds ridiculous. Who would do something like that? And why?" Gloria swallowed hard. "Your father's family." A heavy silence fell between them. Lawrence's stomach twisted. He had no memories of his father. The only thing he knew was that the man had never been in his life. But his family? That was a different story. "My father's family," he repeated, his voice cold. "You expect me to believe they locked you away?" "They didn't just lock me away," Gloria said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They erased me." Lawrence shook his head, refusing to accept it. His father's side of the family had been powerful, wealthy, one of the most influential families in the country. Could they really have done something like this? "I fought for you," Gloria continued, her voice trembling with emotion. "I fought until I had nothing left. But no one would listen to a poor, unwed mother. They called me hysterical. Mentally unwell. And when I tried to escape, they made sure I disappeared for good." Lawrence felt an unfamiliar sensation clawing at his chest. Anger. But it wasn't just anger, it was rage. A fury so deep it made his hands tremble. "How did you get out?" he asked. Gloria gave a bitter smile. "Time. Eventually, they forgot about me. I was released with nothing, no home, no identity, no proof that I had ever existed. And by then, you were gone. I had no idea where you were. All I knew was that you had been adopted out, given a new life." She blinked back tears. "I searched for years, but it was like chasing a ghost." Lawrence's jaw tightened. He had spent his entire life believing he was unwanted, that his mother had abandoned him. Now, everything was turning upside down. If what she was saying was true, then his whole life had been built on a lie. "Why now?" he demanded. "Why come back after all these years?" Gloria's expression softened. "Because I never stopped looking. And when I finally found out who you were, I knew I had to see you, even if it was just once." A sharp pang hit Lawrence in the chest. He had built his life on control, on never letting emotions get in the way. But now, he felt unsteady, like the ground beneath him was shifting. He turned away, running a hand through his hair. He needed time to think. He needed proof. But deep down, he already knew, this woman wasn't lying. And that terrified him. Lawrence sat in his dimly lit study, staring at the glass of whiskey in his hand. The golden liquid swirled as he tilted it absent-mindedly, but he made no move to drink. His mind was too busy unraveling everything Gloria had told him. He had built his entire life on logic, facts, and undeniable truths. And yet, now, his reality felt like it was slipping through his fingers like sand. His mother, his real mother, hadn't abandoned him. She had been taken from him. A sharp knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in," he said, his voice clipped. The heavy wooden door opened, and his best friend and business partner, Trevor Calloway, stepped inside. Dressed in his usual tailored suit, Trevor had a confident air about him, but as he looked at Lawrence, his expression darkened. "You look like hell," Trevor muttered, closing the door behind him. "What happened?" Lawrence exhaled slowly, rubbing his temple. He had known Trevor since college. He was one of the few people in the world Lawrence trusted. If anyone could help him make sense of this, it was him. "She says she's my mother," Lawrence said flatly. Trevor raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "The woman at my gate last night." There was a beat of silence. Then Trevor let out a low whistle. "Damn. Didn't see that coming." Lawrence scoffed. "Neither did I." He leaned forward, placing the glass on his desk. "She knew about the birthmark." That seemed to make Trevor pause. "The one on your shoulder?" Lawrence nodded. Trevor rubbed his chin. "Not exactly public knowledge." "That's unsettling." Lawrence let out a humorless laugh. "That's one way to put it." Trevor took a seat across from him, crossing his arms. "So what now? Do you believe her?" "I don't know," Lawrence admitted. "I want to say it's impossible, but if what she says is true, then," he cut himself off, his fists clenching. "Then everything I thought I knew was a lie." Trevor exhaled through his nose, thoughtful. "You're not just gonna take her word for it, right?" Lawrence shot him a sharp look. "Of course not. I've already contacted a private investigator. If there's proof, I'll find it." Trevor nodded approvingly. "Smart. Look, man, I get it. This is a lot. But don't let emotions cloud your judgment." Lawrence tensed. That was exactly what he was trying to avoid. "Even if she is your mother," Trevor continued carefully, "that doesn't mean she's telling you everything. People have motives. And if someone went through all this trouble to erase her, there's a reason." Lawrence exhaled slowly, nodding. "I know." But something deep in his gut told him that Gloria wasn't lying. And if that was the case, then the people responsible for destroying her life weren't just criminals. They were his family. And he would make them pay. Lawrence sat in the back of his limousine, staring out at the city skyline. The buildings towered over the streets, gleaming symbols of wealth and power, things he had spent his entire life chasing. But tonight, none of it seemed to matter. His phone vibrated on the seat beside him. He picked it up, glancing at the screen. A message from his private investigator, David Langley. "Got something. Meet me at my office." Lawrence's pulse quickened. He had been waiting for this moment, the proof that would either confirm Gloria's story or expose her as a fraud. "Take me to Langley's office," he instructed his driver. The car pulled away from his mansion, gliding through the quiet streets. His fingers tapped restlessly against his knee. He had been unable to focus all day, his mind consumed by the possibility that his entire life had been built on a lie. If Gloria was telling the truth, then someone had stolen everything from them. And that meant someone had to pay. Langley's office was in a discreet high-rise downtown, tucked away between financial firms and law offices. It wasn't flashy, but Lawrence had learned long ago that the best investigators weren't the ones with the biggest billboards. As he stepped inside, the scent of old paper and coffee filled the air. Langley, a grizzled man in his 60s with sharp blue eyes, greeted him with a nod. "You're not gonna like what I found," Langley said, getting straight to the point. Lawrence folded his arms. "Tell me." Langley pulled a file from his desk, flipping it open. "I did some digging into your birth records. The official ones list your mother as deceased, just like you were told." Lawrence's jaw tightened. He already knew that much. "But when I cross-checked hospital records," Langley continued, "I found something strange. Your mother, Gloria Hayes, was admitted to St. Augustine Psychiatric Hospital when you were only a few months old. Not because she was sick, but because she was committed under a court order." Lawrence's breath hitched. "Who signed the order?" Langley slid a document toward him. "Your grandfather. Charles Davis." Lawrence's fingers clenched around the paper. His grandfather, his father's father, had always been a powerful man. Ruthless. He had died years ago, but his influence still ran through the veins of the Davis Empire. "My grandfather had her locked away." Lawrence's voice was dangerously low. Langley nodded. "From what I pieced together, she tried to fight for custody. But Charles Davis had connections in the legal system. He made sure she was deemed unfit, had her institutionalized, and then had you placed in foster care. No adoption. No ties to your family. Just gone." Lawrence's stomach twisted. "Why?" Langley hesitated before answering. "Because she wasn't the woman your grandfather wanted as part of the Davis legacy." Lawrence's blood ran cold. He had always known his family was ruthless, but this? They had erased his mother from existence just to maintain their perfect reputation. "Your father," Langley continued, "tried to go against Charles. From what I found, he loved your mother. Wanted to marry her. But when he died in that car accident, Charles made sure there was nothing left of that chapter of the Davis name." Lawrence's breath came in slow, measured inhales. His father had died when he was just a baby. He had never known the full details, only that it was a tragic accident. But now, doubt crept in. "I don't have proof that Charles had anything to do with your father's death," Langley added, as if reading his mind. "But given what I found, I wouldn't put it past him." Lawrence pushed back from the desk, his mind spinning. His entire life, he had believed he was unwanted. That his mother had abandoned him. That he was alone. But none of that was true. Someone had stolen his life. And now, he was going to take it back. Back in his limousine, Lawrence sat in silence, staring at the city lights blurring past the window. His chest burned with something he hadn't felt in years. Rage. Charles Davis was gone, but the family empire he had built still thrived. The same empire that had crushed his mother and discarded him like he was nothing. Lawrence had spent his life building his own power, his own empire, away from the Davis name. But now, for the first time, he realized, he had every right to claim what was his. And he would. One way or another. Lawrence sat in his office, the city skyline stretching out behind him like a kingdom he had built from nothing. His fingers rested on the edge of his desk, but his mind was far from the reports and contracts stacked in front of him. He couldn't focus. Not when everything he had ever believed about his past had been torn apart. His grandfather had stolen his mother from him. His family had erased her existence. And for over 3 decades, he had lived in ignorance, believing he was nothing more than an abandoned child. Now, he knew the truth. And he had no idea what to do with it. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in," he said, his voice sharper than he intended. The door opened, and Gloria stepped inside. She looked different now, her hair was freshly washed, her frail frame no longer hidden under tattered clothing. The doctors Lawrence had arranged for her had given her the care she so desperately needed, but there were some wounds even medicine couldn't heal. She stood uncertainly near the door, as if she didn't belong. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said softly. Lawrence exhaled, leaning back in his chair. "No. It's fine." Gloria hesitated before stepping forward. "I wanted to thank you, for everything you've done." "You didn't have to." Lawrence studied her for a moment. How strange it was, seeing her here, standing in his office like a ghost from a life he never knew he had. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted. It was the first time in years that he had said those words to anyone. Gloria's lips pressed together. "I understand." Did she? He wasn't sure. He had spent his entire life alone, pushing people away, convinced that love and family were weaknesses. Now, the woman who had given birth to him was standing in front of him, waiting for something he didn't know how to give. "I had a meeting with my investigator," he said finally. "He confirmed everything." Gloria swallowed hard. "I never wanted you to find out this way. How else was I supposed to find out?" His voice was sharper than he intended, but he didn't take it back. "I lived my whole life thinking I was unwanted. That you didn't want me." Her face crumpled, and guilt hit him hard. "I tried," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "God knows, I tried. I spent years searching for you. But I was nothing, Lawrence. I had no money, no connections, no way to fight back against men like Charles Davis." Her breath hitched. "And by the time I found out where you were, you had already built your own life. I thought, maybe you were better off without me." Lawrence's throat tightened. He wanted to be angry, to hold on to the resentment that had fueled him for so long. But as he looked at her, really looked at her, he saw nothing but pain. Pain that mirrored his own. "Why didn't you stop looking?" he asked, his voice quieter now. Gloria's eyes softened. "Because you're my son." Something in his chest cracked. For so long, he had thought of himself as separate from the Davis family, a self-made man with no ties to his past. But this woman, this fragile, broken woman, was his blood. His real family. And for the first time in his life, he didn't know how to move forward. Silence stretched between them before Gloria stepped back toward the door. "I don't expect anything from you," she said gently. "I just wanted you to know the truth. And now that you do, I'll go if you want me to." Lawrence clenched his jaw. He had spent his entire life making decisions based on logic, on strategy. But right now, nothing about this was logical. He didn't want her to leave. But he didn't know how to ask her to stay. After a long pause, he exhaled and looked away. "Stay. At least, for now." Gloria blinked rapidly, as if she hadn't expected that answer. "All right," she whispered. And with that, she left the office, leaving Lawrence alone with a storm of emotions he wasn't ready to face. Lawrence had never been one for family dinners. Growing up in foster care, meals were often eaten in silence, surrounded by strangers who never stayed long. As an adult, he dined in private rooms of the most expensive restaurants, discussing business deals over fine wine and steak. But tonight was different. Tonight, he sat across from Gloria in his mansion's grand dining room, a place that had hosted countless influential figures, CEOs, politicians, celebrities. And yet, it had never felt as intimate, or as foreign, as it did now. The table was set with an elaborate spread, prepared by his private chef. But Gloria barely touched her plate. Instead, she gazed around the room with quiet curiosity, her fingers lightly tracing the rim of her glass. "This place," she murmured. "It doesn't feel like a home." Lawrence paused mid-cut, his knife pressing into the filet mignon on his plate. He lifted his gaze, his expression unreadable. "It isn't," he said simply. Gloria's eyes met his, and for a long moment, there was only silence. She set down her fork. "Then where is home for you?" He didn't answer. Because he didn't know. Home had always been a concept, not a place. It was power, control, the ability to stand untouchable above the rest. But as he sat across from this woman, the woman who had fought for him, who had been taken from him, he found himself wondering if he had been wrong all along. "I know I don't have a right to ask this," Gloria said softly, breaking the silence. "But I'd like to know you, Lawrence. Not the businessman. Not the billionaire." Her voice wavered. "Just my son." Lawrence set his utensils down, leaning back in his chair. The request was simple. But it felt impossible. He had spent his life being guarded, untouchable. Letting someone in, truly in, was not something he knew how to do. "You don't know me," he said after a moment. "I'd like to," she replied. He studied her, looking for deception, an ulterior motive. But all he saw was sincerity. Lawrence exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I work late. I don't take vacations. I don't have close friends, aside from Trevor." Gloria tilted her head. "What do you do when you're not working?" He blinked. The question caught him off guard. Work was his life. There was no off switch. No weekends spent lounging or traveling for pleasure. "I work," he said finally. Gloria frowned. "That's not living, Lawrence." A dry chuckle escaped him. "It's all I know." She studied him, and for the first time since they had met, her gaze was filled with something that unsettled him, pity. "I wish you had been given a chance to have more." His throat tightened. What would his life have been if she had raised him? If he had grown up with love instead of ambition, with a mother instead of cold survival? The thought made his chest ache in a way he wasn't prepared for. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. Gloria's lips trembled slightly, but she nodded in understanding. "Then we take it slow." Slow. Lawrence had never done anything slow in his life. But as he looked at this woman, the woman who should have been there all along, he wondered if, for once, it was worth trying. So, for the first time in as long as he could remember, he let himself sit in the silence. And he let someone in. Lawrence stood on the balcony of his penthouse, watching the city stretch out beneath him. The skyline was bathed in the golden hues of the setting sun, the glass buildings reflecting the light like fire. It was a view he had admired countless times before, a symbol of everything he had built, everything he had conquered. But tonight, it felt different. Because for the first time in his life, he wasn't standing alone. Gloria stood beside him, wrapped in a soft shawl, her frail hands resting on the balcony railing. She gazed at the city below with quiet wonder, as if she had never truly seen it before. "It's beautiful," she murmured. Lawrence studied her from the corner of his eye. She looked healthier than when he had found her, her cheeks had more color, her eyes no longer hollowed by exhaustion. She was still thin, still worn by the years of struggle, but there was something different about her now. She looked at peace. "I never imagined I'd be standing here with you," she continued, her voice thick with emotion. "There were days I thought I'd never see you again." Lawrence tightened his jaw. He didn't know how to respond to that. The weight of the past still hung between them, a chasm neither of them quite knew how to bridge. But they were trying. And maybe that was enough. Langley finished his investigation, he said after a moment. "Everything my grandfather did, it's all documented. Legal records. Court orders. Even payments to doctors and judges to ensure you never got out." Gloria exhaled shakily. "I always knew, deep down." But hearing it, she shook her head. "He stole my life from me." Lawrence's hands curled into fists. "And mine." She turned to look at him, her expression filled with sorrow. "What are you going to do?" Lawrence had spent days thinking about it. Revenge had burned through him like wildfire when he first uncovered the truth. He wanted to destroy the Davis legacy, tear down everything his grandfather had built, make sure no one ever forgot the crimes that had been committed. But now, he wasn't sure. My grandfather is dead, he said slowly. But the people who helped him? Some of them are still alive. Still benefiting from what he did. He exhaled, his eyes dark. I won't let that stand. Gloria didn't argue. She simply nodded, as if she had known this was inevitable. I don't want you to carry this anger forever, Lawrence, she said softly. It's not the life I would have wanted for you. Lawrence looked away. He wasn't sure he knew how to let go of the anger. But maybe, with time, he could learn. A comfortable silence stretched between them as the sun dipped lower on the horizon. After a while, Gloria smiled faintly. You know, when you were a baby, you used to fall asleep in my arms on nights like this. You loved the sound of the wind, the way it whispered through the trees. I used to hum to you until your tiny fingers let go of my shirt. Lawrence swallowed hard, something in his chest tightening. I don't remember that, he admitted. I do, Gloria said, her eyes shining. And now, I get to make new memories with you. Lawrence turned to her, really looking at her. For years, he had believed himself alone, without family, without roots. But now, standing here with the woman who had never stopped searching for him, he realized something. He wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in his life, he had a piece of his past. A piece of himself. And maybe, just maybe, he had found his way home. This story is about more than just a billionaire discovering his long-lost mother, it's about identity, justice, and the power of second chances. Lawrence spent his entire life believing he was unwanted, using that pain to fuel his ambition and build an empire. But success, power, and wealth could never fill the void left by the love he thought he had never received. When faced with the truth, he was forced to confront something far more terrifying than business rivalries or financial risks, his own past. Gloria's journey was one of resilience. Stripped of everything, she never stopped searching for the son she had lost. Despite the cruelty of those who had wronged her, she never let bitterness consume her. Her strength was not in revenge, but in love, the quiet, unwavering love of a mother who refused to forget. The ending of their story is not about erasing pain, nor is it about neatly tying up loose ends. Some wounds take a lifetime to heal. But in that final moment, as Lawrence stands beside his mother, he realizes that home is not a mansion, a fortune, or a legacy. It's a connection, a bond that was broken but never truly lost. And that is the real victory. Not in revenge, but in rediscovering the love that was stolen from them. In learning that even after decades of loss, it's never too late to start again.